안녕하세요.
Night had fallen over Seoul, and the lights of the skyscrapers reflected off the asphalt, still wet from the recent rain. At the top of one of the city's most imposing buildings, Kang Ji-hoon, CEO of Kang Group, impatiently reviewed a contract. His cold, calculating gaze revealed the pressure of maintaining an empire built on sacrifice and discipline. Nothing could distract him from his work, at least. Not until that day. Han Soo-min took a deep breath before stepping into the luxurious building. It was her first day at Kang Group, and her goal was clear: work hard to pay off her family's debts. The elevator doors opened on the 52nd floor, and she walked toward the reception desk, where she was informed that she needed to personally deliver a document to the CEO. It wasn't her job, but as a new employee in the administrative department, she knew she didn't have the right to refuse. Upon reaching the main office, Soo-min knocked lightly on the door. "Excuse me, CEO Kang. I was asked to deliver this document personally." Ji-hoon lifted his eyes for a moment, expecting to see yet another submissive, fearful face. However, he found himself looking at a young woman with a determined expression who did not avert her gaze. That was unusual. He was accustomed to seeing others bow in his presence, afraid of making any mistake that could cost them dearly. But Soo-min stood there, hands firmly holding the folder, without a trace of hesitation in her eyes. Surprised, he finally extended his hand and took the document. "You're new here, aren't you?" His voice was deep, carrying the same cold tone that had made many tremble in his company. "Yes, I started today. I'm Han Soo-min from the finance department." Her voice was steady, yet respectful. Ji-hoon noticed that she held his gaze a second longer than anyone else would dare. "If you already understand how things work here, then you may leave." He gave a slight nod, ending the conversation. But just as she turned to go, a sudden gust of wind from the slightly open window caused a page from the document to slip from his hands. Without thinking, Soo-min instinctively turned to catch it mid-air, but lost her balance. In a swift reflex, Ji-hoon reached out and grasped her hand before she could fall to the ground. 1 second. 2 seconds. Time seemed to stop. They stood there, eyes locked, feeling the pressure of the unexpected touch. She quickly composed herself, adjusting her uniform, uncomfortable with her own vulnerability in front of such an imposing man. "Be more careful next time," Ji-hoon warned, turning his attention back to the papers and stepping away as if nothing had happened. Soo-min swallowed hard and gave a quick bow before leaving. But as she closed the office door, she realized that her hands were trembling. Not from fear, but from something else she wasn't willing to admit. Later, as she adjusted reports at her desk, she overheard her colleagues whispering, "Did you see? The boss actually spoke to the new employee. He doesn't even look at most of us." She must be the type that attracts attention. Luck or strategy? Soo-min pretended not to hear and focused on her work. Still, she couldn't deny that the brief exchange with Ji-hoon had left her strangely unsettled. Ji-hoon was not immune either. In the silence of his luxurious office, his thoughts kept drifting back to that brief exchange of glances. Since when had a simple encounter caused him such unease? He tapped his fingers on the desk, frustrated by his own interest in a woman who was supposed to be just another employee. CEO Kang never got distracted. He never let emotions interfere with his path. But as he left the office that night, his gaze involuntarily sought out the slender figure of Han Soo-min across the floor. She was focused, her lips slightly pursed as she read a document. Ji-hoon frowned. The dangerous game between reason and emotion had begun, and he wasn't sure he would emerge unscathed. The following week passed in the blink of an eye. Han Soo-min was getting used to the exhausting routine at Kang Group, though her presence seemed to attract more attention than she would have liked. Ever since her first encounter with CEO Kang Ji-hoon, her colleagues' eyes followed her everywhere. Some were filled with curiosity, others with pure envy. While she organized documents in the conference room, a deep and commanding voice made her freeze. "Do you work past office hours every day?" Ji-hoon asked, leaning against the doorframe with his arms crossed. Soo-min quickly turned around, controlling her surprise. "I just want to make sure everything is in order for tomorrow's meeting, sir." He observed her for a moment before stepping into the room, his shoes echoing against the marble floor. "That's not your responsibility. Your supervisor should be handling this." She pressed her lips together before responding. Yes, but I like to do a job well done. Ji-hoon raised an eyebrow. Or are you just trying to impress? Soo-min froze for an instant, surprised by the insinuation. I'm not the type who seeks attention, CEO Kang. I just want to keep my job. He held her gaze longer than he should have. Her honesty surprised him. It was rare to find someone so dedicated without hidden motives. He picked up one of the reports from the table and quickly flipped through it. If you keep this up, you'll be promoted sooner than you think. But be careful. Not everyone in this company likes seeing someone rise too quickly. She nodded, absorbing the warning. Thank you for your concern, sir. Ji-hoon closed the file, and for a moment, he seemed to hesitate before speaking. Have you had dinner? Soo-min widened her eyes slightly. That question coming from him was unexpected. Not yet, but I'm not hungry. He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he pulled out his phone and made a short call. A few minutes later, one of the assistants entered the room with 2 boxes of sophisticated food. I don't like eating alone, Ji-hoon said simply, pushing one of the boxes toward her. Soo-min blinked, unsure of how to react. Refusing could be seen as disrespectful, but accepting might fuel even more gossip. With a quiet sigh, she picked up the chopsticks and began eating in silence, feeling Ji-hoon's gaze on her the entire time. The CEO also ate, but his thoughts were elsewhere. This woman intrigued him in a way he didn't understand. There was something about her that made him lower his guard, and that unsettled him. But it also made him curious. When they finished, Ji-hoon stood up and adjusted his suit jacket. Don't overwork yourself, and if you need anything, let me know. Soo-min nodded, watching as he left the room with his imposing presence. Little did she know that this was only the beginning of a relationship that would challenge all the rules of the corporate world and the Kang family itself. The following days brought a new dynamic to Kang Group's daily routine. Han-soo, Min's name was no longer unfamiliar in the company's hallways. Everyone whispered about how the feared CEO, known for his coldness and detachment, seemed to have taken an unusual interest in the new employee. Small gestures, discreet glances, and shared lunches with her did not go unnoticed. As she typed reports on her computer, Soo-min tried to convince herself that it was nothing. He's just being polite, she thought. But the flutter in her stomach every time their eyes met told a different story. That afternoon, the phone on her desk rang. The moment she picked it up, she immediately recognized Ji-hoon's voice. My office. Now. His tone was as firm and authoritative as ever, leaving no room for discussion. Feeling her heartbeat quicken, Soo-min stood up and walked to the glass door, knocking lightly before entering. The office was imposing, minimalist, and elegantly decorated. The light of the late afternoon streamed through the enormous panoramic window, casting a golden glow on Ji-hoon's sharp features as he sat at his desk. He lifted his eyes the moment he noticed her presence. Close the door, he ordered calmly. Soo-min swallowed hard but obeyed. Her eyes scanned the room for a moment, taking in the breathtaking view of the city bathed in the setting sun. But soon her attention was drawn back to Ji-hoon, who was now rising from his chair and walking toward her. You've been doing excellent work, he said, gesturing for her to sit in the chair across from his desk. I've been observing your dedication, and I must admit it's rare to find. Soo-min smiled shyly and lowered her gaze. I'm just doing my job. Ji-hoon leaned back in his chair, clasping his hands together. And that's exactly what interests me. Ordinary people don't usually put in this much effort. She hesitated, considering his words. With all due respect, sir, why am I here right now? I don't believe this is just about the extra work. He didn't hold back a small smirk. Direct as always. I like that. There was something different in Ji-hoon's gaze. Something that wasn't just professional interest. Soo-min felt warmth creeping up her body as he leaned slightly forward. Have you ever wondered why I chose you for this task? He asked, his tone calm yet intense. Soo-min blinked a few times before replying. I assume it was out of convenience. I was in the right place at the right time. Ji-hoon let out a low chuckle as if amused. You really do intrigue me, Han-soo-min. But contrary to what you think, nothing here happens by chance. Remember that. Soo-min swallowed hard. A tingling sensation spread through her skin, as if she were stepping into dangerous territory. She knew exactly who Ji-hoon was. The young and brilliant tycoon, but also a man known for being cold and untouchable. No one dared to get too close to him. And yet, for some reason she couldn't understand, he was showing interest in a mere employee. Before she could respond, a quick knock sounded at the door. It was an assistant carrying another document. Ji-hoon shifted his gaze from her and took the paper, turning his attention back to business. "You can go, Soo-min. If you need anything, come to me." She quickly bowed and left the office, her heart pounding against her chest. Something was happening between them, and no matter how much she tried to ignore it, she couldn't deny the chill that ran down her spine every time she locked eyes with her boss. What was this, really? A fleeting interest, or the beginning of something she wouldn't be able to control? The connection between Han Soo-min and Kang Ji-hoon was becoming increasingly evident, even though neither of them openly admitted it. No matter how hard she tried to maintain professionalism, Soo-min noticed the lingering gazes, the not-so-coincidental encounters. Ji-hoon, in turn, found in her something he had never felt but comfort. However, the world around them was quick to notice the change. On a cloudy afternoon, Soo-min was unexpectedly summoned to a meeting on the executive floor. As soon as she stepped into the luxurious conference room, she saw a poised woman seated by the window, her back turned. When the woman finally turned to face her, Soo-min felt a chill run down her spine. It was Kang Ji-yeon, the matriarch of the Kang family. "So, you are Han Soo-min?" Her voice was sharp, dripping with superiority. Soo-min bowed respectfully. "Yes, ma'am. I was called to this meeting." "Don't play naive." Ji-yeon smirked coldly, crossing her legs. "I know exactly what's going on between you and my son." Soo-min felt her heart race. "There is nothing inappropriate, Mrs. Kang. I only work for the CEO. Ji-yeon leaned forward, her piercing gaze analyzing every flicker of emotion on Soo-min's face. "Don't fool yourself. Kang Ji-hoon may be powerful, but he is still my son. And I will not allow him to throw everything away for a mere employee." The weight of her words fell on Soo-min like a stone. "I never intended to harm CEO Kang or the company." Ji-yeon smiled in a way that was almost condescending. "If that's true, then you won't have any issues stepping away, will you?" Before Soo-min could respond, the door burst open abruptly. Kang Ji-hoon entered with a dark expression, his eyes locked onto his mother. "Mother, what are you doing?" His voice was low, but it carried an undeniable authority. Ji-yeon remained composed, offering him only a small smile. "I'm merely protecting you from a decision that could ruin your future." Ji-hoon took a deep breath and stepped forward, stopping beside Soo-min. "If my future depends on letting her go, then maybe I'm willing to pay that price." Soo-min turned to him, startled. "CEO Kang." He glanced at her, his gaze softer. "Ji-hoon. You can call me Ji-hoon." Ji-yeon scoffed in disbelief. "Do you really think you can defy the family, Ji-hoon? Your father sacrificed everything to put you in this position, and you're going to throw it all away for a woman without a prestigious name?" Ji-hoon met her gaze, his expression unwavering. "You always taught me that true power comes from making the right decision. And this is my decision." Ji-yeon stood up, her posture elegant yet menacing. "We'll see how long you can hold on to that conviction." With that, she strode out of the room, leaving behind a heavy silence. Soo-min could feel that her presence there was no longer safe. "Ji-hoon, maybe it's best if I—" He interrupted her. I'm not leaving you to face this alone." The sincerity in his eyes made her question everything. Was it worth fighting against a world determined to tear them apart? Or would their love truly be strong enough to withstand any obstacle? The tension within Kang Group intensified after the confrontation between Ji-hoon and his mother. Rumors spread through the hallways, and Soo-min began to feel the weight of being by the side of a man like him. The stares from colleagues, the whispers as she walked by everything indicated that her presence there was becoming uncomfortable for many. One night, while working late to avoid the next day's gossip, the door to the office suddenly opened without warning. Ji-hoon walked in, carrying a charged energy with him. "You should be at home," he said, crossing his arms as he saw her still in front of the computer. Soo-min looked up at him. "If I leave early, it only gives them more reason to talk about me. At least here, I can focus on my work. Ji-hoon sighed and walked over to her desk, sitting on the edge. I don't want you to feel pressured. No one has the right to make you feel uncomfortable. She laughed, but there was a trace of sadness in her voice. That's easy for you to say. For me, there's no escape. I'm just an employee, Ji-hoon. They can get rid of me at any moment. Ji-hoon leaned forward and took her hand firmly but gently. I won't let that happen. Not now. Not ever. Soo-min's eyes locked onto his, and she felt the sincerity in his words. But before she could respond, her phone vibrated. When she looked at the screen, a familiar name appeared, her mother. She hesitated but answered. Oma? The voice on the other end was filled with worry. Soo-min, can we talk? We need to meet, now. Soo-min swallowed hard and nodded before hanging up. Ji-hoon noticed the change in her expression. What happened? My mother wants to see me. Something's wrong. Without hesitation, Ji-hoon grabbed his coat. I'm coming with you. They drove to a small restaurant where her mother was waiting. As soon as Soo-min walked in, she recognized the distressed look on the woman's face. Ji-hoon stayed slightly behind, giving them privacy. Oma? What happened? Her mother took her hands tightly. Soo-min, I've heard things about you and CEO Kang. Are they true? Soo-min averted her gaze, but didn't deny it. Oma, I like him. The woman's expression darkened. Daughter, do you know what this means? Families like his don't accept people like us. I don't want to see you suffer. Soo-min felt a tightness in her chest. I know, Oma. But Ji-hoon is different. He's willing to fight for us. Before her mother could respond, Ji-hoon stepped closer. Mrs. Han, I understand your concern, but I want you to know that I am willing to face any obstacle to be with your daughter. Soo-min's mother looked at him skeptically. Words are easy to say, but can you really stand against your family for her? Ji-hoon met her gaze firmly. This isn't just a choice. For me, there's no turning back. Silence filled the air. Soo-min felt her heart torn between the love she felt and the weight of the reality surrounding them. Were they truly ready to pay the price for this love? The days that followed were turbulent. The pressure on Ji-hoon at Kang Group intensified, and Soo-min was forced to endure the relentless scrutiny of her colleagues. Ji-hoon's mother had not given up on separating them, and the company's board members saw their relationship as a threat to business. Even so, Ji-hoon remained steadfast. One night, he took Soo-min to a special place, a small hidden garden on the outskirts of Seoul. The place was illuminated only by the soft glow of lanterns he had prepared himself. Soo-min looked around, deeply moved. What is all this? She asked. Ji-hoon took her hands and smiled. I want this to be the beginning of our future. No matter what happens, I choose you, Soo-min. Before she could respond, he knelt down and took a small velvet box from his pocket. Inside was a simple yet incredibly beautiful ring. Marry me. Not because of the struggles we've faced, but because I can't imagine a future without you. Tears streamed down Soo-min's face. The weight of the hardships they had endured made this moment even more precious. Without hesitation, she nodded. Yes, Ji-hoon. I want to spend my life by your side. He smiled and slid the ring onto her finger before standing up and pulling her into a tight embrace. In that instant, all barriers seemed insignificant. The wedding was intimate but filled with emotion. Despite her initial resistance, Ji-hoon's mother attended, though her gaze carried a mixture of pride and resignation. Married life brought its challenges, but also its joys. Soo-min left Kang Group to pursue her passion for art, and Ji-hoon restructured the company to balance work and personal life. Years later, on a sunny afternoon, Ji-hoon held their daughter in his arms while watching Soo-min paint in the garden. Their love had endured the storms and blossomed into something even more beautiful. Soo-min looked at him and smiled. Do you still think it was worth it? Ji-hoon chuckled and kissed their daughter's forehead. Every second. And so, under the golden glow of the setting sun, they knew they had found their true home in each other.